The air in that tiny fitting room was thick enough to drink, heavy with the scent of new fabric and something else, something electric and dangerous that hummed between us. It was a space no bigger than a closet, lined with mirrors on three sides, each one reflecting a version of a scene I never, in my wildest dreams, thought I'd be a part of. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, a wild, chaotic rhythm that drowned out the muffled pop music from the department store outside. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, a blush that had nothing to do with the stuffy atmosphere and everything to do with the pair of intense dark eyes fixed on me. His eyes, Liam's eyes. And in that moment, as his gaze lingered on the bare skin of my shoulder, I knew I had made a terrible, terrible mistake. But oh, how it thrilled me. It all started, as these things often do, with a simple good intention. My name is Clara, and 6 months ago I married the love of my life, David. He's kind, successful, funny, and he looks at me like I'm the only woman in the world. He came with a package, though, a beautiful, complicated, and utterly silent package named Liam. Liam is David's son from his first marriage, a 19-year-old freshman at the local community college. When David and I got serious, I knew winning Liam over would be my greatest challenge. His mother, David's ex-wife Sarah, had passed away when Liam was just 14, a tragedy that had cast a long, somber shadow over his life and his relationship with his father. David told me Liam had retreated into himself after Sarah's death, building walls so high that even he, his own father, struggled to scale them. I met Liam for the first time over a painfully awkward dinner at David's house. I'd spent the day cooking, my nerves a tangled mess. I wanted everything to be perfect. I made lasagna, David's favorite, and a chocolate lava cake for dessert. Liam arrived 10 minutes late, mumbled a hello without making eye contact, and spent the entire meal staring at his plate, pushing his food around with his fork. He was handsome, in a brooding, artistic way, with his father's dark hair and eyes, but his face was a mask of indifference. I tried everything. I asked about school, about his hobbies, about a band I'd seen on a t-shirt in his laundry basket. I was met with shrugs, one-word answers, and a profound, unnerving silence. David tried to bridge the gaps, but it was like trying to have a conversation with a beautiful marble statue. By the end of the night, I felt deflated, a complete failure. David just squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "It's not you, Clara, he's just Liam. Give him time." So I gave him time. I moved in a few months later, and my life became a delicate dance of trying to connect without crowding, of being present without being pushy. I'd leave his favorite snacks on the counter. I'd make sure the coffee was ready before his early morning classes. I'd casually mention a new movie I thought he might like, leaving the tickets on the kitchen counter with a note that said, "No pressure to go with your old stepmom, just thought you might be interested." He never took the tickets, but sometimes the snacks would disappear. It was a small victory, but I clung to it. Slowly, glacially, the ice began to crack. It started with music. One Saturday, I was cleaning the living room, blasting an old indie rock playlist from my college days. I was singing along badly to a song by The National when I heard a quiet voice behind me. "That's a deep cut." I nearly jumped out of my skin. Liam was standing there, leaning against the doorframe, a look of what I thought might be amusement on his face. It was the most spontaneous thing he'd ever said to me. "Oh, yeah, I love this album," I stammered, feeling my face flush. "It's my go-to for cleaning." He nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "It's a good one. My mom, she loved them." The mention of his mother hung in the air, fragile and heavy, but it was an opening, a tiny, tentative bridge. For the next hour we stood there and talked about music. He told me about bands I'd never heard of. I told him about the concerts I'd gone to. It was the first real conversation we'd ever had. From that day on, music became our language. He'd leave his headphones on the kitchen counter, and I'd take a peek at what he was listening to. I'd find the songs on Spotify and add them to a shared playlist I created, cheekily naming it Clara Boya Liam's Sonic Bridge. He never said anything about it, but a few days later I noticed he'd added 3 songs to it. My heart soared. It felt like winning the lottery. We started having these little moments, a shared laugh over a ridiculous cat video David showed us, a debate over the best way to make popcorn. He started sitting in the living room while I watched TV, not saying much, just being there. The silence was no longer empty. It was comfortable, companionable. I felt like I was finally becoming a part of the family, like we were forging something real. Then David dropped the bombshell. He'd been chosen to represent his company at a major tech conference in San Francisco. It was a huge opportunity, a 4-day trip that he couldn't turn down. The catch? It was over our wedding anniversary. He was apologetic, promising to make it up to me with a lavish trip when he got back. I understood, of course I did. I was proud of him. But as the date of his departure grew closer, a strange feeling began to bubble in my stomach. It was a mix of loneliness at the thought of being alone in our big house, and a weird, fluttery sense of opportunity. With David gone, it would just be me and Liam. A whole weekend. No buffer. No mediator. It was a chance to either solidify the fragile bond we'd built, or to shatter it completely. The night David left, he hugged me tight at the door. "Take care of my boy," he whispered, his eyes full of trust. "And take care of yourself. I love you." "I love you too," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "And don't worry, we'll be fine. We'd be fine. We might even have some fun." After he left, the house felt cavernously quiet. I ordered a pizza and called out to Liam that dinner was ready. He emerged from his room, his face illuminated by the blue light of his phone. We ate in the living room, watching a sci-fi movie he'd picked. It was nice, relaxed. The next day, Saturday, I decided to seize the day. I had a work gala coming up in a few weeks, a formal event that required a new dress. And then the idea struck me. It was bold, maybe a little reckless, but it felt right. I would ask Liam to come with me, to help me pick out a dress. It was the kind of thing a cool stepmom would do, right? It was a chance to get his opinion, to spend some quality time together, to show him that I valued his perspective. I found him in the backyard, sketching in a worn notebook. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, "I have a weird favor to ask." He looked up, his dark eyes curious. "I need to buy a dress for my work gala, and I hate shopping alone. I was wondering, if you're not busy, if you'd come with me, be my fashion consultant?" I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable shrug, the mumbled excuse. But instead, a slow smile spread across his face. "Sure," he said. "Why not?" Beats staring at this blank page. My heart did a little flip. This was it. This was our chance. The drive to the mall was different from our usual car rides. The silence wasn't awkward. It was filled with the sound of a playlist he'd put together, a mix of his band's and mine. We sang along, off-key, to a song by the Killers, and I caught him looking at me, a genuine, unguarded smile on his face. It felt like we were just two friends hanging out on a Saturday afternoon. The stepmom, stepson label felt a million miles away. At the mall, we fell into an easy rhythm. We wandered through the department stores, and he was surprisingly opinionated and insightful. "No, not that one," he'd say, shaking his head at a frumpy beaded gown. "It looks like something a cruise ship captain would wear." I'd laugh, swatting his arm playfully. "Okay, Mr. Fashion, you find something then." He'd browse the racks with a focus that surprised me, pulling out options I never would have considered. A sleek black jumpsuit, a velvet slip dress in a deep sapphire blue, a form-fitting sheath dress in emerald green. "This one," he said, holding up the green dress. "The color would look incredible on you." I took it from him, my fingers brushing against his. A tiny spark, like static electricity, shot up my arm. I ignored it, attributing it to the dry mall air. We gathered an armful of possibilities and headed for the fitting rooms. The area was quiet and luxurious, with heavy velvet curtains instead of doors, and plush, velvet-cushioned chairs for waiting. "All right," I said, my voice a little too bright. "Wish me luck. I'll be out in a minute." I ducked into the largest cubicle, pulling the heavy curtains shut behind me. Inside, the lighting was soft and flattering. I hung the dresses on the hook and looked at my reflection. I felt a strange mix of excitement and nerves. I wanted him to like the dresses. I wanted him to approve. I wanted him to see me as more than just his dad's wife. I wanted him to see Ome. I started with the black jumpsuit. It was chic and sophisticated, but felt a little severe. I took a deep breath and pulled back the curtain, stepping out into the common area. Liam was sitting in one of the chairs, scrolling on his phone, but he looked up immediately. "Well?" I asked, doing a little turn. "It's nice," he said, his expression neutral. "Very professional." "Nice," I repeated. "That's what a woman wants to hear." "Nice." He chuckled, a low, warm sound. "Sorry, it's just not you. It's a little stiff." I nodded, retreating back into the fitting room. He was right. Next, I tried the sapphire blue velvet dress. It was soft and slinky, clinging to my curves in a way that was both elegant and alluring. I hesitated before pulling back the curtain. This one felt more personal, more revealing. I took another breath and stepped out. This time, Liam's reaction was different. He put his phone down, face down on his lap. His eyes swept over me, from the tips of my toes to the top of my head. The silence stretched for a beat, 2 beats, 3. "That's better," he finally said, his voice a little lower than before. "Much better." "Yeah?" I asked, feeling a blush creep up my neck. "Yeah," he said, his gaze lingering on the neckline. "The color is great. It's a good one." I felt a thrill run through me, a dangerous, intoxicating pulse of pleasure. His approval was potent. I smiled a little shakily and went back into the fitting room, my heart beating a little faster. There was one dress left, the emerald green one, the one he had picked. I saved it for last, like a dessert. I unzipped the garment bag and slid the dress from its hanger. The fabric was a heavy, stretchy knit that felt like liquid in my hands. I slipped it on, the material hugging every inch of my body. It was stunning. The color was rich and vibrant against my skin. The cut was daring but classy, and it made me feel powerful, confident, and incredibly sexy. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, a woman I barely recognized. This was the dress. I knew it before I even showed him. But showing him felt like crossing a line. It felt like a test, a dare. I took a moment to compose myself, to slow my racing heart. I could just tell him it was the one. I didn't have to show him. But a part of me, a reckless, curious part, wanted to see his reaction. I needed to see it. I pulled back the curtain, and the world seemed to slow down. He wasn't on his phone this time, he was just sitting there, waiting. And when he saw me, his entire posture changed. He sat up straight, his eyes widening slightly. His mouth fell open just a fraction before he caught himself. He didn't say anything, he just looked. And his look was nothing like the others. It wasn't polite or neutral, or even just appreciative. It was intense, hungry, almost possessive. His eyes traced the line of the dress, the way it clung to my hips, my waist, my chest. He looked at me like I was a work of art he wanted to devour. The air between us grew thick, charged with an energy so potent it was almost visible. My breath hitched in my throat. I felt exposed, not just physically, but emotionally. It was as if he could see right through the dress, right through the carefully constructed walls of our relationship, to the complicated, messy, and inappropriate thoughts that were suddenly swirling in my own head. "Wow," he breathed, the word barely a whisper. "That's the one." He stood up slowly and took a step towards me. The fitting room area was deserted, a small private bubble in the middle of the bustling mall. He was close now, close enough that I could smell the faint, clean scent of his cologne, something woodsy and masculine, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "It fits perfectly," he said, his voice low and raspy. He reached out a hand, and for a heart-stopping second, I thought he was going to touch me. But his hand stopped just short of the fabric on my hip. "The strap, it's a little twisted," he said, his eyes fixed on the delicate strap over my shoulder. My entire body went rigid. My mind was screaming at me to step back, to pull away, to laugh it off and go back into the fitting room. But I was frozen, mesmerized by the intensity in his gaze. I was a moth drawn to a flame, and I knew I was about to get burned. His fingers, warm and slightly calloused, gently brushed against my skin as he adjusted the strap. The touch was fleeting, innocent in its execution, but it sent a jolt of electricity through me that was anything but. It was a match dropped on a puddle of gasoline. The air crackled. My skin tingled where he had touched me. His fingers lingered for a fraction of a second too long, his thumb tracing the line of my collarbone. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I could see the rapid pulse beating in his neck. I looked up and met his eyes, and what I saw there made my stomach drop. It wasn't just admiration, it was desire, raw, undisguised, and completely forbidden. And in that moment, I knew with horrifying certainty that he wasn't just looking at his stepmother, he was looking at a woman. And I, in my reckless quest for his approval, had shown him a side of me I could never take back. Just then, a sales associate with a clattering hanger walked past the entrance to the fitting area, her cheerful voice shattering the spell like a glass breaking. "Everything all right in here, folks? Finding everything okay?" The spell was broken. I stumbled back, as if I'd been physically pushed, and retreated into the fitting room, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I fumbled with the curtain, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grasp the fabric. I pulled it shut, plunging myself into semi-darkness, and leaned against the cool, mirrored wall, trying to catch my breath. I could still feel the ghost of his touch on my skin. I could still see the look in his eyes. What had I done? What had we almost done? I looked at my reflection in the mirror, my face pale, my eyes wide with a mixture of shock, guilt, and a terrifying, undeniable flicker of excitement. I had wanted his attention. I had craved his approval, but I had never, ever wanted this. Or had I? The question hung in the air, poisonous and seductive. I quickly changed back into my clothes, my movements clumsy and frantic. I couldn't stay in there a second longer. I had to get out. I emerged from the fitting room a few minutes later, the green dress draped over my arm. I couldn't bring myself to look at him. I kept my eyes fixed on the floor. "I'll take this one," I said, my voice tight and strained. I walked quickly to the cashier, my legs feeling like they were made of jelly. He followed behind me, silent. The easy, companionable atmosphere from earlier was gone, replaced by a thick, suffocating tension. I paid for the dress in a haze, my hands trembling as I tapped my credit card on the machine. The cashier asked if I wanted a bag, and I just nodded, unable to form words. The walk back to the car was a nightmare. Every step felt heavy, every sound amplified. The silence between us was no longer comfortable. It was a chasm filled with everything we hadn't said. I could feel his eyes on me, but I refused to meet his gaze. I was afraid of what I would see. I was afraid of what he would see in mine. The drive home was even worse. The radio was off. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers against a light rain that had started to fall. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Guilt. I was married to his father. I was betraying David's trust in the most profound way imaginable, even if nothing had technically happened. Shame. I was the adult. I was supposed to be the responsible one. I had let the situation get out of hand. Fear. What did this mean for our family? For my marriage? For my relationship with Liam, which I had worked so hard to build? But beneath all of that, there was another feeling, a dark and thrilling current that I was horrified to admit was there. It was the feeling of being seen, truly seen. Not as David's wife, not as Liam's stepmom, but as Clara, a woman, and the person who saw me that way was the one person in the world he shouldn't be. When we finally pulled into the driveway, I practically bolted from the car. "I'm tired," I mumbled, not looking at him. "I think I'm just going to read in my room for a bit." "Clara, wait," he said, his voice stopping me in my tracks. I turned slowly, my heart in my throat. He was standing by the passenger door, the rain matting his dark hair. His face was a mask of turmoil. "Back there," he started, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. I got carried away. It was just the dress, and you." He trailed off, looking lost and confused, like a boy who had stumbled into a situation he was completely unequipped to handle. Seeing his vulnerability, his own confusion, broke something open inside me. The anger and fear I felt towards him melted away, replaced by a wave of protectiveness and a deep, aching sadness. We were in this mess together, and we were both drowning. "It's okay, Liam," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "It was a weird moment. Let's just forget it, okay?" He searched my face, his eyes pleading. "Can we?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Can we really?" I didn't have an answer for him, because I knew with a certainty that settled like a stone in my gut that we would never be able to forget it. That moment in the fitting room, with its velvet curtains and charged air and his fingers on my skin, had changed everything. It had shattered the fragile, careful boundaries we had built, and it had awakened something dangerous and volatile between us. It was a line that could never be uncrossed. I just shook my head, a small, sad movement, and turned and walked into the house, leaving him standing alone in the rain. I went straight to my room, closing and locking the door behind me. I sank to the floor, my back against the wood, and finally let the tears come. I cried for the innocence we had lost, for the simple, easy relationship I had so desperately wanted, and for the complicated, tangled mess we had created instead. I cried for David, my wonderful, trusting husband, who had no idea that the foundation of his perfect new family had just been splintered by a single, reckless moment in a department store fitting room. The green dress was still in its bag on my bed, a vibrant, beautiful symbol of my terrible mistake. I knew I could never wear it. Every time I looked at it, I would see Liam's face. I would feel his touch. I would remember the way the air got steamy. That moment in the fitting room, it could have shattered everything, and in a way it did. It shattered the simple, easy relationship I thought we were building. But what we built in its place, well, that's a story for another day.